From the flight deck of the astral plane, this is your captain, Starpilot33, just re-entering the atmosphere and starting to decompress after another amazing adventure on the other side. After Condor Blue's test flight of the outdoor-grown PE prototypes, I really wanted to try them too, and compare the outdoor fresh ones to the indoor-grown dried ones. My window of opportunity was closing though, since fresh ones don't last very long. You need to either eat them or dry them. Of course, and as usual, I didn't feel ready. Normally, I prepped for a week, but this last week was crazy with life and work-related stuff, and I really didn't feel like I was in the best mindset, really. I got some motivation, though, from TripWhip's video entitled, "Should You Take Psychedelics If You're Afraid?" If you haven't seen this video, check it out. There's a lot of good stuff in there. You may be asking, but why are you afraid? Don't you have a lot of experience and years doing this? See, that's the thing. The longer you do this, the more you experience good and bad, and the more you have a deep respect for this process and the power behind it. Over time, it can begin to become a psychological stumbling block, because in the process of preparing and knowing it's time to trip, you start overanalyzing why you aren't ready yet because of past experiences that were maybe really intense or difficult. If you saw the video of my last trip log number 6, or the one before that, or any of them in the last year really, then you'll understand how intense and emotionally exhausting these trips can be. Despite the benefits that I know are coming from it, I also start to find a lot of reasons why not to do it, or why I'm not ready, or any other excuse I can conjure up at the last minute. After a lot of apprehension, but knowing that I was due to trip, and the fresh ones were just there waiting, and I didn't want to waste them, I had a good day leading up to it, so I just decided to trip whip it and go for it, even though I really didn't feel ready by any means. Now, there's a difference between tripping when you're not 100% ready, and maybe not totally prepared, and a little apprehensive about it all, and then going in when you're in a bad spot mentally, and I would advise against that. If you're super stressed out, just got in a fight with a family member, boss, neighbor, etc., or you had your blood boil at any point throughout the day or previous day, and you feel intense negative emotions like anger or extreme sadness, then don't trip until that passes, because these feelings will be amplified, and that's no fun at all. But if you're stalling because you're worried about having a difficult time, not remembering all the positive benefits, or just focusing on negative memories about trips, then that's when it can be beneficial to go outside your comfort zone for a bit. Fear can paralyze you in life and on trips. Fear is a biological and psychological response that's supposed to serve a good natural purpose in alerting us to danger to keep us safe. But when fear is allowed off the leash, it can begin to bark at everything, making you believe that you should fear things that you really shouldn't. Once fear gets its teeth in you, it can be very hard to shake off too. This trip was a good lesson for me going in even when I didn't quite feel ready. Last time, I remember hearing the voice of my guide, Ami, saying, "You don't have to have everything perfect and be in the perfect mindset like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that people like that aren't the ones we need to talk to anyway." Still, that trip was rough. Maybe the hardest one I've ever done, in fact. And I had all of that going on in my head going into this one. After all, that trip was on a new batch of mushrooms whose genetics were a little bit stronger than I anticipated, and these were from the same batch, just grown outside, so I was wary about jumping in too boldly again. The day before, I had taken a nap midday, and I had a wild dream, waking up all disoriented and thinking I'd slept all day, but it was just for an hour. In my dream, I was wondering if I ought to trip on those fresh shrooms, since I hadn't done any preparation at all. The week was not what I would call a good mental prep week. It was pretty stressful, in fact. And as the dream was fading, I thought I heard a voice say, "Don't think of it as a trip. Think of it as a dinner date, and after a nice meal, we'll chat." And I replied, "That sounds lovely." After I woke up and got my bearings again, I wondered if I had really heard Ami. It sounded like him, and the idea sounded really nice. Cook up something good, not shoveling down spoonfuls of dried shrooms with orange juice. Condor Blue said he had an easy time eating them cooked with pasta, and of course my first thought was, well, watch me have a rough time though. This was the first time I had ever eaten them fresh, and I used Condor Blue's recipe, modifying it slightly with brown rice and quinoa instead of pasta, but used the garlic, onion, tomatoes, and 37 grams of fresh, free-range penis envy mushrooms grown in the sunshine and the evening dew. And it was so, so delicious. Fresh PEs, cooked in a little butter, caramelized onions and garlic, activated with the acid of some fresh tomatoes, tasted amazing. The flavor is not quite like your usual button or portobello mushroom, but it has more of a wild mushroom flavor like shiitake or yellow or black morels. I'd already prepped the house, saged and prayed, put a cross above every window and doorway with some Peruvian agua de Florida, or flower water, which they use in the ayahuasca ceremonies. It has a nice, light scent mixed with the sage. It helps to prepare my senses for what's coming. The sight of the countertop mesa with my special items that mean something to me, some of which may represent things I want to discuss that night, helps me to get in the trip zone. The smell of the flower water and the sage gets me ready too. Previously, the horrible taste of the dried shrooms and orange juice was just another sensory experience that told me that, boy, this is really happening, but last night was really nice. I didn't eat a lot, just a small plate, and I ate slowly, savoring every bite. It really did feel like a dinner date. Now I was just waiting for it to hit so I could meet up with my friend Ami. Before it got too far underway, I opened up my night sky app on my phone to see which constellation was rising right in front of me where I sat. There's a constellation that's made of two parts, combined to form a ship. Vela, the sails, and Carina, the keel. The constellation was just crossing the horizon, and above it was Pyxis, the compass. I knew this was no coincidence, not with all the ship and keel imagery on the last trip. Condor Blue said it hit him fast, and it hit me fast too. I ate at around 6 p.m., and around 6:20 I was signing off on my phone and getting ready to go. I got comfortable on the couch, facing where the green light from my power outlet strip would be when it got dark enough to see it reflected on the ceiling. At only 6:30 p.m., it was still light out, and everything was very bright, even with my eyes closed. Immediately, I began to see shapes and images, the same kind of geometry I always see, but this time, the lines were rounded and smooth, not sharp and so machine-like. Everywhere was this pink peach color, just like Condor Blue had talked about. All the structures were rounded in interlocking shapes that were a salmon pink, traced with rainbow lights, or it was a pearl white or pearlescent ivory color. I saw walls and rooms made of this material, and I tried to think of how it looked different from what I'd seen before. The shapes and panels were similar, but there was more of a Polynesian look, or Aztec. Round geometric lines and rounded pipes and machines were everywhere. I saw one machine that looked like the most complicated-looking water pump I'd ever seen. It looked like a tangled knot of bluish-gray tubes from Super Mario, all plugged into a central housing. I felt a warm, welcoming feeling all around me and was bathed in this comforting light of that realm. "Welcome back, Captain Chicken Shit," said a voice, and I knew it was Ami. I opened my eyes, and the green light was starting to show on the wall as the sun set. I laughed at myself, realizing I had once again nearly talked myself out of something that was already promised to be a good thing. "Captain Chicken Shit is present on the bridge," I said. Ami laughed. "See, this is supposed to be enjoyable," he said. "It's not always supposed to be hard and the biggest challenge you've ever faced. Tonight is going to be different. I think you're really going to like it. You've already blown up the Death Star and fought the armies of the dead beyond the edge of everything and all that, but you kind of skipped some basic things back in the beginning, and tonight we're going to revisit those lessons. It's not a remedial training like you did anything wrong, but your so-called aerobatics will be so much better if you revisit the foundational maneuvers on which all the difficult stuff is built." So, Starpilot, tonight's lesson is straight and level. Remember that? That's the very first lesson in pilot training that everyone likes to hurry past so they can get to more interesting things like turns and climbs and other maneuvers. Straight and level feels boring if you don't understand what it's trying to teach you. And it can be more challenging than one would expect, but it's all about perspective and balance. I sat there on the couch and looked at the wall and saw a round, old-fashioned cockpit instrument with a horizon bisecting it, reflecting there. "This level horizon is your reference for your ship," Ami said. "Look at where the nose of the ship is relative to that horizon. Then look out the sides and see where your wings are relative to it as well. Now hold that reference steady by keeping the outside picture the same. Don't focus on the instrument. It's just a miniature of the huge horizon that's out there. As long as you can see that, you don't need the instrument, other than to cross-reference what you already know. Here we want to balance the forces of flight so that no one force is stronger than the others. And breathe. No matter what happens, breathe and focus on that horizon as your level and your anchor for all external reference." So I did that for a while, really feeling like I was in a flying lesson with an instructor. "Now, you also have to maintain alignment front to back as well as side to side," he said. "Your wings may be level, but your tail might not be directly behind you, and that means you'll be flying crooked. That's not only inefficient, but it creates more resistance to your forward motion than you ought to have. See this little instrument with the ball? The little ball represents the tail of your ship. Step on the pedal to the side the ball is leaning until it's in the middle again to keep your tail behind you. I did this quietly for some time, just happily flying the little ship along in a straight balanced line until we returned to debrief. That was fun, wasn't it? When life gets turbulent, you have to return to the basics of straight and level, he said. Find your horizon, level your wings, balance your ship, and breathe. Life is not meant to be miserable and serious. The Creator made all of this to be joyful and playful. Laughter and humor are so important. Everything was founded on joy, not seriousness. Really? I said. Because it seems awfully serious. Our tendency to be serious about everything is like graffiti sprayed upon the side of a beautiful train that represents what this universe is, like a miracle of engineering and art, powered by love and joy, and we've defiled the essence of what it's supposed to look like. So how do we fix it? I asked. We can't, he said. But we can stop spraying graffiti on it for one thing. We can't undo what we've already done, but we can choose to be different from this point forward. And I said, but what about the graffiti? The Creator is not surprised at all by the graffiti that we've made. In fact, it's being used to create something even bigger and better from the mess we've made of it all. So all of this is supposed to be lighthearted and fun, I said, and laughter and stupid humor is divine in some way? If you only knew how much of this universe started with gas, Ami laughed, and so did I. God has the best sense of humor, he said. The original one, in fact. He's the god of dark and light and physics and all that, but he also invented farts. I laughed until my stomach hurt with that comment, but it's true, really. Look at all the ridiculousness just about what we know about the physical universe and the way things work and the funny ways mushrooms grow and the silly way that animals are. There's a levity to all of it, except for what we add to it. Humans seem to be the ones always dropping a turd into the proverbial punch bowl at the party with their religion and politics and relationship drama and personal existential pondering about everything. Remember that movie, Monty Python and the Holy Grail? Ami asked. Sure, I love that movie. It's pure genius, I said. That's the lens you need to look through when you look at the crap of this life. Don't overanalyze it. Others are taking themselves way too seriously, and unfortunately it's causing a lot of misery for the rest of humanity. What would you say is the most serious thing that humans fight over worldwide? I thought for a moment. Religion. I would say historically people have done more damage to each other over religion than anything else. That's right, Ami said. And it's all man-made conventions, traditions, and rituals. Everyone stands in front of this graffiti on the beautifully masterfully engineered train and worships all the symbols that they sprayed on there, but they're completely missing the whole point of the glory of it all, and that it's a divine creation powered by joy and laughter. When you have a good laugh, don't you feel instantly better, he asked. Of course, I said. It's hard to find things that make me laugh like that, though, although you always seem to. Do you want to go out and back for a bit and come back in a little while, he said, meaning did I want to close my eyes and dip out for a bit? Sure, if it's okay with you. Okay, no problem. Close your eyes and let's launch with a countdown, shall we? So I closed my eyes and was immediately face to face with this huge spaceship. I've seen this one before. It's huge, the size of like a supercell thunderstorm, and rotating slowly like a giant disc. This was the same silver pearl color with interlocking and overlapping morphing panels traced with a cycling spectrum of lights. It reminded me of like a ride at the fair with all the chasing lights everywhere, but it was also incredibly intricate and very sentient. So I plugged in as I always do, and I waited for everything to start coming online. Okay, good, Ami said. Ready for the countdown? Right, I said. Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Hang on, I'm not quite comfortable, I said as I squirmed on the couch. Okay, 4, 3, wait, did I skip a number? I think I did. Whatever, who cares? Go, fucker, go! As we launched, I was laughing. Ami was laughing, and I think the spaceship was even laughing. This is why you don't work for NASA, Ami said. But that's definitely the right spirit in which to launch a ship, he said. So we returned from that, and it was only around 2.5 hours in. I started to feel a little restless and uncomfortable, and I had a little heartburn too, probably from the tomatoes, which I tend to avoid for this exact reason. You shouldn't lie down after eating anyway, silly, Ami said. Try sitting up. This is totally a different trip than the other ones, remember? It was a totally different trip too. And I was okay with breaking from the usual routine, not only in eating them fresh, but also eating them with food, not lying down, and all the other things that I normally did like a ritual. So I sat cross-legged on the couch and rested my hands on my knees in the classic meditation position, and it did help for a bit. I breathed in and out, practiced keeping the ship level, but I could feel things starting to deviate off course. The heartburn was bad enough that I had to go get an antacid. There was a hint of nausea too. Just thinking about that, and the nausea and the straight-up puking from the last 2 trips, started to send my mind on a little bit of a dark spiral. It was the physical way that I was feeling that was playing into the mental game at that point. I tried to suppress it, but the more I did, the more I felt like I was resisting the trip and trying to control it. Ami told me early on, do not drink any water until he said so. So all I had was a small amount of food cooked with the mushrooms from 3 hours earlier and no water with it. I knew from the last time that if nausea hits, you'll be lucky to get to the bathroom, so I had a towel ready on the floor as an emergency landing strip in case I needed it. And I did. But because I hadn't had any water, it was just some, gagging and retching, and threw up just a tiny little bit. And then that was it, and I felt so much better. Remember that fishing trip you went on that one time in the high seas, Ami asked? Yeah, that was crazy, I said. The little offshore fishing charter that was going up and down on big waves, so big that you could stand by the rail and see all sky, then all water. Up and down, and the whole boat was packed with people fishing. I was okay for a bit, and then the seasickness got to me. I really didn't want to puke in front of everybody, but at some point I just couldn't help it, and I just heaved over the side. And then I felt really good, and I kept fishing, and I actually caught a bunch of fish. I felt sick again, puked, kept fishing, and I did this for hours, and in hindsight, it was actually a really good fishing trip. I felt good as soon as I puked. Same thing with this, and not having drank a liter of water really helped too. So some mild nausea at about the 3 to 3.5 hour mark with a little gagging and a brief puke, and we were back in business. By 10 p.m. that phase had passed, so it was all in the 3 to 4 hour time frame as far as the trip was concerned. Co-pilot Cat, meanwhile, was sleeping soundly through all of this, waking up just briefly to snuggle and give me kisses, and he would turn around and then go back to sleep on the coffee table next to the couch. Even now as I write this, he's still crashed out, peacefully sleeping after a brief breakfast. The trip vibe is still very heavy in the house and very peaceful. Last night was so quiet. At some point, the breaker in the kitchen must have kicked off and all the lights went out, and it was totally dark in the house except for the green light on the wall and the ceiling where I sat and talked to Ami. Outside was totally quiet too. No noise from the highway or screaming motorcycles or loud neighbors or parties. No lights anywhere. Normally, neighbors have lights on at only 10 p.m. on a Friday night, but it was totally black outside. Ami and I talked for hours about everything. Problems I was having, projects I was working on, stuff about my art and my book. I'm working on the cover art for the book at the moment, and we talked about that for a bit, as well as some of the storyline related stuff. Then we talked about life in general and the phases that it goes through. And he said not to feel sad about the end of certain things. Be glad for what they were and the times that you had. All those phases and times, if they lasted forever, there would be no room for new things. And eventually those old things you look back on so fondly would get routine and stagnant, like climbing the same mountain again and again. He told me to be glad for what it was and look forward to what will be. He said I'd been through a lot, and I'd had a lot of adventures in life, and while some of them are over, that doesn't mean that more aren't coming. And he said I have a lot yet to do, and just because some things have ended, doesn't mean it's the end of everything. Do you want to go out and back again? He asked. Sure, I said, as I closed my eyes. Again, I was met with the shapes and patterns, very indigenous in nature and mysterious. I thought of the Incas and the Aztecs and the Egyptians while I saw these patterns as they rotated around me. The scene shifted to something very Native American, and I heard drums and chants, and I saw the mountains and the desert, and I was flying high above a red canyon in the daytime, but there were stars above me. And I looked down, and I saw myself as an eagle flying above the earth, but it was a mechanized eagle, like a spaceship with its panels, but in an eagle's form. And the stars above were infusing the panels of the eagle with their spectrums of light and color, energizing the ship. I heard a voice like a native elder saying, "You are a warrior, a fighting eagle. You are not the kind that makes a nest and finds a home on the earth. Your home is here, and from here you can see things that those on the earth cannot. Tell them what you see, for all who cannot climb to this height. Here you can see what is below, and you can also see what is above in the stars, and the horizon that divides the earth and the sky, your dimension and all others. Tell them what you see here, and bring back this wisdom for those who can't fly. Your fight is not against the wind or gravity, but against the darkness. So you must burn like a star as you fly, and always bring back with you whatever you've learned for others." I opened my eyes. So I'm a warrior fighting eagle, and I'm also Captain Chicken Shit, so which is it? I laughed. Both, Emmy said, also laughing, and I mean Captain Chicken Shit in the most respectful way for a captain of your caliber. Fighting Eagle Chicken Shit, that's a good name, isn't it, right? I said. It resonates with the spirit of laughter and joy in a universe that doesn't take itself too seriously, that's for sure, Emmy said. My stomach was actually hurting from all the laughing, and this morning it still is. In fact, just remembering what was said, it's just as funny the second and third time around, too. I looked at the time, and it was after 11 p.m. Now, normally I head into the bedroom and get ready for bed and spend the second half of the trip in there, going through whatever interdimensional battle they have planned for me, but this was totally different. I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to stay in that peaceful place with the snoring cat and Ami and just be there together in this peaceful vibe. I told him I was really thankful for all of his help on all these trips in the past year and that he's a great friend. I told him I had so many questions for him and I wanted to ask him about himself, but I didn't want to be rude. And he said, I know most of your questions and I can't answer them anyway because it's not part of the plan to know. I know. I've just been curious about who he is or was, or did I know him somehow, and when did he live, and who was he in life, and what was he like? He did confirm that he's done this before, and by that I mean psychedelics. So that's why he's such a relatable guide on these trips. It's like having an experienced trip sitter and mentor there the whole time, and he knows exactly when to talk, when to let me talk, and when to let me go explore and come back again. Eventually, we ran out of things to talk about. I told him that this was a wonderful evening, and such a different kind of trip. He said that he was glad that I took him up on his offer because he thought that I would enjoy it. And there was just that one difficult part, but I got through it, and the rest of it was amazing. And we sat in silence for a while. I didn't know what else to say, but I knew that the time was growing short. I feel like I don't want this trip to ever end, I said. This is so nice, just being here in this peaceful place with you. Sometimes, we just need someone to be there with us and not feel obligated to make conversation, Ami said. And you need this right now. Yes, I did. I was feeling the come down, but not in the way I normally feel, with restlessness. It was like a heavy, comforting blanket was settling on me, and it made me feel sleepy. I drank some more water and commented that I felt really dried out. My eyes, nose, lips, ears, everything felt like I'd spent a week in the mountains of Telluride. My ears had been popping for most of the trip, too. It's the altitude, Ami said. It's dry up there where you like to go. I told him I wanted to close my eyes, but I didn't want to miss out on time with him there because I knew it was almost over. He said to rest and he would stay as long as he could, but his time was growing short. I woke up around 1:40 a.m. and realized I'd actually fallen asleep, somewhere in the patterns and lights of the other side. I looked at the green light, and Ami was still there. I told him I was probably going to fall asleep pretty soon at some point, and I'd sleep on the couch all night if I had to because I didn't want to leave before he did. It was getting hard to hear him. He said, that's fine, just relax and enjoy the landing. It's been a great night. Before I fell asleep again, I told him thank you, and that I loved him with the source code of creation, just like I learned on the last journey. I love you too, Starpilot, he said. See you next time. Don't stay away too long. When I woke up at 3 a.m., the house was the same. The cats were still asleep, but Ami was gone, and the light on the wall and the ceiling was just a light, again with no presence there. I queued up my night sky app to see what constellation was rising now at the end of my flight, and it was Aquila, the eagle. I stumbled to the bedroom, fell into bed. The cats followed and slept beside me. I finally woke up at 11 a.m. feeling refreshed, not exhausted like I normally do. I didn't have a headache or feel extremely fatigued or like I'd run the crucible the night before. I felt like I just had some dinner and stayed up all night talking with a friend, and that's pretty much what the whole trip was. I really needed that trip. After a year of high-dose, difficult battles that tested me to the limits of what I could handle, this is what I really needed. Like anything else, it wasn't all roses, and that 1 hour of struggle was nothing compared to the 7 other hours of beautiful images, valuable lessons, and good laughs. Between now and my next trip, I need to practice what I learned. Straight and level. Balance the forces. Align yourself with the direction you're headed. Basic stuff, but it gets lost in the fray. I'm glad I didn't let fear and apprehension bog me down, and I just trip-whipped it and went anyway. No risk, no magic. Let go and hang on. Let it flow and don't fight it. It's all just a phase and it will pass. Morning will always come. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. I look forward to your comments, emails, and DMs. You can email me at starpilot33@protonmail.com or find me on Instagram at starpilot33. Until next time, stay safe and healthy, keep your wings level and your eyes on the horizon, and I'll see you on the other side.